Hey everybody, welcome to the DOPEandTAPE show. Today is our second ever Blue Collar Broadcasting. It has been a year since we've been able to sit down. We're trying to do more. It's just when you're here at expos, at conventions, at now the board meetings for AFSA, like you get too much in the mix, and for you to stop and set up and go live and all that, and then it takes. Everybody has their own schedules too, and then we're like, how do we want to do this? You know, it's like it's a lot of work, you know. So, but we're doing it. We're trying to give you more. I don't know. I want to say a goal of 5 at least this year. That would be a good one. You know, that's about every expo and event, and we'll sit down with someone. We have Katie and her father.
Mike.
Mike. John was close. You get called John.
I tried to say
not too often.
No, Mike. Sorry about that. But thank you all so much for coming and hanging out with us. So this is me and Bobby's first rodeo at the AFSA board meetings. What I'm getting out of it, is that you really do have a voice. Like you get involved in here, and if you want to present something, you could do a subcommittee. And then you develop that, and then you present it again, and it's passed or not. And then so your concept essentially is implemented on a national level. And I can't think of another way that we could really impact, you know, what goes on more than that.
Yeah. We're glad y'all are here.
Super excited to be here. Thanks for having us. Everybody, welcome for the lunchtime live Blue Collar Broadcasting. We see Florencio, first one in here, and Paul. So it's our, like Brian said, it's our first little go round on the committee, and I find myself at a table arguing with Bob Caputo. You know?
Yeah, he started talking. I was like, Bob,
where else can you do that? So we're in San Juan, Puerto Rico, and happy to be here. Any questions, please fire them off. We're going to talk about Katie and her father. We really can focus on you and your career, and you know how did you get here and.
All right. Well, my name's Mike Meehan, and I'm with the VSC Fire and Security, and I've been with AFSA for probably 20. I've been on the board for probably 20 years, and I started off as a pipe fitter, working my summers out in the field, and when my dad said to me, "What are you doing this summer?" I said, "I don't have anything lined up yet, Dad." And he goes, "Well, one of my buddies is a sprinkler fitter. He needs some help." And I said,
That's what happens.
I don't feel like digging dishes all summer, Dad.
That's what
And he
happens.
goes, no, not those kind of sprinklers. Overhead fire sprinklers. And I said, that sounds interesting. So I did that one summer, and I did it again the next summer. And then when I got out, the real world kind of crashed in. I graduated, and I needed a job. So I stuck my head in the office, and I'd always heard that they were looking for designers. I stuck my head in the office and said, "Look, I just graduated. I'm looking for a career," which really wasn't quite the case. It was really I just needed a job.
Right.
And I looked around, and it's like, wow. After about 6 months, I said, "Man, this is pretty cool."
Yeah.
And I think I can do okay here. I really don't got to be that bright to shine in this organization here. So I started to apply myself quite hard, and really started working 50, 60 hours a week, and never looked back. It's been a phenomenal ride.
So I said this last, I guess, our first meeting. So we've had almost, I guess if you rounded it, almost 200 episodes. So only 2 people out of the 200 actually applied for fire protection, but it was on, I think both of them were Craigslist. So like the other ones was
they were searching, they were actively scrolling, like, oh, what's this?
Right.
Mm-hmm. But the rest brought in, hey, I need a job. Oh, Uncle Vinny has a sprinkler company. Go over there.
For sure.
They're hiring you. Could be an apprentice. Get up on your feet again. So it's like we see it, and it's continuing to be that way. Of we're the last resort, right? They don't have another job. They lost their job. They can't find a job, and then like, oh well, you can come hang pipe and start, get a check and all that, and build your way up. And they're like, oh well. Okay, and then of course once you're in fire protection, you fall in love with it because it's amazing.
You're
and
stuck.
the people's
You do.
incredible.
Yeah.
And you're there forever. And then you're like, I love it.
Yeah.
But you don't know about it.
It seems like everybody's story, they either fell into it or it's family.
They're pushed.
Yeah.
Well, he's 3rd generation. I'm 2nd, and now
Yep.
Second.
Here.
2nd.
Yep.
Yep. And my other 2 daughters were in the business for a little bit.
Oh, so you must have had some. I mean, a great path for them. I mean, I'm in love with it because if they're in it.
Well, I told them both. I said everybody, like one, it was an opportunity.
Right.
We needed help, as we often do. All the offices need help, so it was legitimate. But also, look, if your heart's not in this, be careful, because you'll turn around and you'll be 30 years old and you're going to be sucked into this industry, and then you'll be 50.
Yeah, right.
So
no time.
And they both wound up going in slightly different directions, but everybody's been in the business, and Katie stuck around.
They kind of dabbled, and
Yeah.
I had my nose
Well, you're
in the
full
air.
in.
Yeah,
Oh, yeah.
I got stuck.
I mean, with this, you're quite involved. You know.
I had my nose in the air that I wasn't going to get involved. I said, "Oh, you worked for Dad, and you worked for Dad. I'm not going to work for Dad." And then I don't know, 7-8 years later, I'm still here. So
Yeah.
it does that. It sucks you in, and it's a great. We are very blessed. We work for a great company with VSC, but it's a great industry, which
Right.
is the reason we're all here today at the committee meetings, and so it's the quarterly committee and board meetings. That's what we're all together for now.
Hi and hello from Australia. 5 a.m. in Australia.
Wow.
Let's go.
Oh, awesome! Thanks for joining us.
Thanks for joining us. Andrew, appreciate you. We've got Quinn, and we got Matt Bass. What up, Matt?
What's up, Matt?
Beauty and the Beast treasures? I won't even ask.
Yeah.
Thanks for joining us live from San Juan. So, how about over all the years, what would be your most memorable flood?
We flooded the Pentagon once.
What?
Yeah, that was bad.
Oh well.
That was bad, he says.
We also got a parking garage in downtown Alexandria one time that was really bad, and couldn't find the cutoff valve. We were out there jackhammering up the street. We made the news. We had traffic backed up for miles. That was a pretty bad one.
You were
that
you were young on that one too, right?
Yeah, I was young for both of those, but yeah, those were some bad ones.
Those are some good ones. Those are always.
But you put in enough for these systems, you're going to have some mistakes, and we
You're
try
always
real
gonna have a
hard to
flood
avoid it,
story.
but-
Well, I mean, you touch it so long, it's easy to like forget something. It's just you're just going through it over and over and over and over. Like one time I was up in the attic changing out a leaking piece of section of pipe, and I already cut it and grooved it, and then I went to go put my impact on the bolt, and I hit it, and it spun a little bit, and I was like, wait,
Something didn't feel right.
did I? And then I went to go check, and nope, I didn't. So
Almost
if
catastrophe.
Boom, it could have been terrible. And at a old folks home where they would have to find somewhere else to stay, and it was just. Whew.
What's up,
but
Carlos?
It's so easy to happen.
Thanks for joining.
Carlos, I saw one of your videos today. I think Jessica passed it on. You made a video down in Denver. It was great.
Great video, Carlos. We heard about him in the Home Coalition too, right?
Yes, I think so.
He's
Yep.
doing one of the houses.
Yeah. Yep.
Heard about you.
And he also, he's in social media. He's coming in strong.
He's big
got
in
a
social
content
media.
guy.
Yeah.
He's making content.
That's
Good
the
stuff.
way to put fire sprinklers on the map, and it might seem vague to the older generation, but if we want young people to be coming in to know what sprinkler is about, I mean,
Gotta
they're
know
on
where
their
they
phones.
are.
Any young person in your life, they're not like this.
Yeah.
Well, let's
always.
get on that screen. You got to make a video.
That's right.
So I've only seen one of your shows,
Mhm.
and thoroughly enjoyed it. And I love your lightness and your banter and the way you go about it. And but one of the things that I noticed in that one show is I felt like you guys didn't have a real good grasp of some of the history of sprinklers, in the industry. And you guys know where the first sprinkler head came from?
No. Was it in America?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
A guy named Frederick Grinnell of Grinnell.
Well, I recognize his last name.
So yeah, Frederick Grinnell made the very first sprinkler head, probably around 1880, 1888, and it was in response, the old saying, what is it? Necessity breeds invention, and so the great textile mills in the Northeast, Boston and stuff, were burning down.
Right.
And they were taking all the cotton from the South and bringing it up to the Northeast at that time and turning it into fabric. And it was just a massive fire hazard with all the mechanical sewing machines and the dust that they were creating, which is just a wicked combination. So the insurance companies were getting annoyed because they were losing their buildings. and I assume they were also annoyed about losing people, but I'm not so sure sometimes. But that's what Grinnell actually responded to, and he made the first automatic sprinkler head. And you should keep your eyes open for one up there, because if you find one of those, people collect those.
I think that
the 1890 heads, 1888
I think they have one at Johnson Controls in Rhode Island. I have a photo.
Yeah,
of it.
Johnson Controls has a great collection.
A huge collection, right?
Yeah, and so does Factory Mutual.
And they have,
and so does some fitters.
Do they have
over the
Grinnell's
years.
desk there? I think
They
they
might.
have. I think they
Grinnell's
have Grinnell's
desk?
original like leather desk at where we went with Casey.
Oh, that's sweet. I missed that.
And so
I have a photo of it.
Another interesting piece is, the very first. So there was no NFPA. There was no guidelines. So it was just the insurance companies saying, if that's what you say will work and it'll save the building, I'm all in.
Right.
So slowly the code started from that. And the original NFPA 13, if you can find it, is about 8 pages.
Oh.
And it would be really neat to get your hands on one of those if you
Mhm.
could. And now, of course, it's,
Right.
300
Jeez, I don't know
pages.
where you would find one.
Yeah.
For sure.
And then, a lot of the other interesting history, I think, that helps put where we're at here in 2025 in context is NFPA really came about after the Great Chicago Fire.
Right.
So, are you familiar with that story?
I am.
That's a good story too, I think, for your audience to understand. Really why it came about was we burned our second greatest city to the ground, and then the code started. It's
I
like,
was like,
wait
well,
a
we
minute,
should
maybe we
do
It's
screwed
always
up here.
tragedy, right?
It's
So
always.
the code,
Yeah.
It always is tragedy that brings in the.
Then the codes stiffen up.
Yep.
Yeah. Or the standards. Just really the building codes stiffen up, and then the standards follow.
Now you had, I'm guessing, a lot of different roles through your time in the fire protection.
Mm-hmm.
Which was your favorite?
I loved being a pipe fitter. I just loved the work, the physicalness of it, getting up early, the camaraderie with the guys was always great. But I've enjoyed the entire thing. I enjoyed estimating and getting to know the customers. I enjoyed the project management. And then ultimately, I wound up in the C-suite and all the different aspects that go with that.
Right.
So it's been a great ride. I'll tell you another really interesting aspect is I'm on NFPA 13. I'm a principal on 13, and watching the standard making process from the inside. When I was a designer, I held that book in great reverence, and then when I actually got on the committee and saw how that sausage was made,
Right.
I was like, OMG. I thought there was a lot of science and knowledge and all this behind it, and there was a whole lot of dice rolling.
An idea.
There was a whole lot of acceptance of this is the way we did it. It's different today. The labs do a lot more work, and the computers have made a big difference, but a lot of the standard was very intuitive. When the original standard came out, and 1, 1 1/4, 1 1/2 pipe schedule systems,
right.
and where'd that come from? Well, it just seemed like a good idea.
Seems like a good idea.
Yeah, there's a fair amount of that involved. So the NFPA process is really neat to be involved with, to actually see that.
Can you say anything that's what's coming up or you are working on?
Well, we get a new one every 3 years, so it's always in flux. And what's really neat too is you guys get to submit something. If you see something out there that you don't like, there's a very, very open democratic process to submit a request and say, I think the hangars should be this way, or I think we should do it.
Right. Yeah.
I don't like goosenecks, or whatever you
Yeah.
want. And you have to substantiate your reason. But you can submit it to the committee, and the committee has an obligation to review it and accept it or reject it or accept it with a modification. And then it will be in the code from that point forward. So every 3 years we go through a new cycle. Most jurisdictions are actually several years behind. So
I'm aware of that.
So it just depends on where you're at. But it's a very open democratic process, and they try real hard to have all the different facets of the industry represented. They have fitters, they have insurers, they have AHJs, they have owners represented. So in theory, everybody's got a voice. All the stakeholders in the fire protection community have a voice in the way the standards are maintained and written.
It's a very inviting industry. I mean, even so, AFSA, I get a lot of questions on how do you become a member, and Katie might be able to explain it better than me, but I really want to start locally and just try to get involved there and do what you can with your local committees, right?
Yeah, so the process he's talking about for NFPA is very similar to that with AFSA, and the American Fire Sprinkler Association is a national association, but then also has about 36 local chapters across the country. So we are all volunteers on the committees. Mike serves on the board of directors, which is an elected position. And then there's AFSA staff as well that can assist anyone that's interested in joining their local chapter or joining from a national level as well. So I know Mike can speak a little bit more to that, but I know Bobby even just got some questions earlier today. Their meetings, and I've been on the committees for about 6 or 7 years. Mm-hmm. Mike's been on them for over a couple decades now at this point. But getting on the committees is open to association members, and invitations come through that, and there's a bit of a political process, if you will, that I don't know if you want to speak to.
Well, I think it's helpful if you step back and realize, okay, one, we're a trade association, so our goal is to represent fire sprinkler contractors.
Right.
And in particular, open shop merit fire sprinkler contractors. We came about in 1981, and it was really because the open shop contractors couldn't get training, and so the unions were pretty protective of that effort, and so AFSA was really a reaction to that, to try to train their pipe fitters and get the Department of Labor to recognize it. So we have full apprenticeship training programs, and that's how it literally started, really because of that. And so now it's growing into we have 1,100 contractor members across the country in North America, Central America, but we touch so many different things now. So what we one of the, I think, the more important functions is we have a great technical staff. So when you've got a question or your company has a question, they're able to call up and say, wait a minute, this guy's saying that head's blocked. Do I really need to add this over here? Or he's got an objection with these hydraulics, or an AHJ is telling you to do something crazy. You can find an outlet to counter that, to get some technical support. But there's a tremendous amount of support that we give to NFPA in maintaining the codes. So lots of the folks in the technical staff here, like myself, we're on the different technical committees, so that the contractors and the industry don't get too sideways sometimes, getting told to do stuff that we really find objectionable. But and we're not always on the same page. The AHJs might say, look, we really want to see this. And there'll be other people, the engineering community will say, well, that could be excessive, or they could be on the same page with it. Right. So one of the things that the trade association does is helps to navigate all of that. And then there's also relationships with the vendors, the Victolics of the world, the Reliables of the world, Ferguson's, the distributors, and we try to keep that a level playing field and maintain good relations with them, and make sure that the contractors are getting treated squarely. And so, they're very involved in the associations at the same time too. So those are some of the things that we do, and it's just a way to kind of maintain the health of the industry as a whole. We do have enemies, and the block people, they like to see 3-hour walls and not sprinklers. Yeah. So there's a lot of objections from home builders and stuff like that, where there are people that aren't fond of suppression, and they think it's excessive. And so this is a way for us to, as an industry, to have a voice and speak to the construction industry. When you look at fire sprinklers, we're 1% to 2% of a construction contract. Right. Maybe 3 tops. So that's a really small voice in the grand scheme of this massive project. So this is a way for us as an industry to have a voice.
That's definitely what I feel. Like I came here thinking I'm just gonna get involved, because that's what I need to do. I need to get involved and try to help. But then now I'm like, well, I feel like I have a purpose because I can help guide this.
You're on subcommittees now,
yeah.
dude.
You have subcommittees.
You raised your hand.
Yeah, twice.
So
Twice, and then after the meeting, Bobby was like, no more.
Yeah, I wanted to do the
You got
second
two.
one. I want to be on a committee without Brian. You know what I mean?
Yeah,
Like we
there
can't
you
just
go.
be like the dynamic duo. Like you go this way, I go that way. Brian's just like me.
well, I would
Do
ask
it.
I would ask you two as contractors, what do you, and it's different. Our VSC's evolved over the years as we've grown, but we've been an AFSA member since the inception of AFSA. And what would you say to someone looking to join AFSA and what the value is as a contractor?
I think it's important that you give back. We're all really, really lucky, and particularly if you're, in the ownership levels of the companies, you need to give back to this industry that's giving you so much, and you need to train your people, and you need to respect your people, and you need to give like you guys are doing, taking your own time and coming out here and seeing another side of the business besides, what you're out there doing when you're pulling the wrenches and cutting the all thread rod. It's a big world that we're in, and to see how your piece of it fits in is got to be pretty eye-opening for you folks to see this other side of the business. You kind of always knew it was there, but I don't know, maybe I always thought the field always thought, well, you guys just you make a lot of money and you sign some checks and you drive a nice car,
Right.
But there's so many aspects to this that are happening behind the scenes to make it all click. And when you're part of a trade organization like this, I think you get to see it, the broadness of it a little better.
Yeah.
We should really go back to one of the episodes where it just hit. We were like, what do they do at NFPA? We were on like maybe episode 40. We were like what's it like there?
What's
like what
it
is
like?
inside there?
We
I went on
have no
YouTube. I
idea.
went on YouTube on the show, and I'm like, there wasn't one video of inside the expo, and I'm like, you couldn't even tell what it looks like in there. And then that's when I literally said on the show like, we should go videotape. And then like that's when Jim Stoddard from
Jim
Arco,
Stoddard is
or
like,
actually Daryl
"Bring
found
him
us.
up."
It was Daryl
Yeah,
that
yeah.
found us, and then he's like, you guys should go. And they said, and that was like, now we're there at every one and trying to show it to people. And
There's another really interesting aspect that I think a lot of folks, even within the industry, don't quite grasp, and they think, well, we put sprinklers in because NFPA tells us to put them in. Well, that's actually not correct. NFPA tells you how. It does not tell you when to do it. So why don't we put sprinklers in a standalone Wawa or a 7-Eleven? But we do in this conference center, in this hotel. Why?
that's a great point.
It's not NFPA. That's actually the building codes. So the hierarchy is really the building codes first. They say when. NFPA says how. So another level of influence is you actually want to influence the building codes or understand the building codes. And like we said earlier, you get a tragedy and then the building codes tighten up. You had the White Snake fire up in, was it Vermont? That nightclub fire?
Rhode Island.
Rhode Island, yeah. It was tragic, and 40 or 50 people died. Some pyrotechnics got sideways.
That
and-
place went up very,
Crazy.
very quickly.
Yeah.
And there's
But the
very
codes
disturbing
reacted
videos
to
of
that.
it.
So the building codes then said, look, if there's going to be an assembly use group, that's where people drink and gather, as opposed to the 7-Eleven or a residential unit, then they tightened up the codes. And then NFPA will tell you how to go do that correctly. So that's an interesting little tidbit.
That is. I didn't know that. What you got going on over there, Bobby?
Well, I want to know what it's called now.
I think we had a couple questions come in for you too.
Yeah.
In the
The
comments.
the station nightclub fire.
The
Yes.
station nightclub fire.
We have Florencio. He says, can you speak on AFSA trade days and also great events? How does it work to sign up and get the most benefits from it? So, I mean,
As a fitter.
the expo's free. No?
Yeah.
Expo floor is free, right?
Not exactly. I think that there's different types of registration that you can get, like a day pass or a full day registration. But I don't know if you're talking about the AFSA event itself, the national convention, or
yeah.
joining as a whole. So as far as joining as a whole, we accept contract members and MS members and AHJ members, and those are all different tiers depending on the level of contractor you are. And
So the structure at AFSA, the American Fire Sprinkler Association, is we have local chapters, of which we have 30 some, and like the North Carolina, South Carolina chapter, the Virginia chapter, the California, there's 4 chapters in California. So we cover the entire geographic footprint. And some chapters are super, super strong, where there's a lot of talented people in there. And then some chapters, they're not as strong. They just don't have the volunteers to help make it go. And then there's the national AFSA, which is what we're associated with now. But once a year we have a national convention, and we try to alternate East Coast, West Coast. So we've got one coming up in Washington, D.C. in the fall, September. And so that might be the expo you're referring to, and there's generally a couple thousand people there. All the vendors, set up booths there, and there's a tremendous amount of networking, and you really get a feel for the breadth of the industry.
Tremendous amount of networking.
That's the biggest thing, and the best part about it is the networking.
Yeah, and AFSA does it right.
But I think that some people showed up last year and they were able to get on the expo floor.
Yeah, you can just show up and get a pass that day. And if you're on the East Coast or you can make it out there, I'd highly recommend that. Regardless of what you do within the industry, you'll find that day worthwhile. And there's a lot of seminars. We probably put on 60 different seminars.
120 this year.
120 seminars, everything from hydraulic design to how to sell a sprinkler system to how to run the back of house office to insurance issues, just all kinds of different aspects of the business that a lot of times you don't get a chance to touch on.
Maybe y'all could weigh in on this, but how to get the most out of it, maybe it's at your local chapter.
That's where I'd start.
Just go into the first meeting, so you just look on your local chapter, like mine's Georgia Fire Sprinkler Association. They have their next meeting, and I just show up and introduce myself and say, I want to get involved, or what is this? What does it look like for me to get involved? How can I help? And then you can get in.
Yeah.
Would you say that that's kind of the best first step?
Definitely.
Yeah, if you have a local chapter, I would highly encourage you to get connected there. There's a ton of local legislative issues going on in certain markets that they can be really helpful with. We've got a ton going on in Virginia that our local chapter has been huge with over the years.
So this is what Florencio's talking about right now.
Okay.
Trade Days 2025 in San Diego.
Yeah, so this is a great example of a local event. So this is being put on by the San Diego chapter. I live in Virginia, so I'm not super well versed on this. I've just heard about it from some of our colleagues here that live out on the East Coast.
So what a lot of the chapters will put on a mini convention. And they'll have the vendors show up and do seminars within their local chapter. It might only be 1 or 2 seminars, but it's an opportunity for you to
I have a contact
go and
San
learn
Diego,
something about the industry
Okay.
Yeah.
locally.
Yeah, that's awesome. Andrew Evans, this is from Australia. Is NFPA the most used standard in the world?
Yes, definitely for fire protection. Yes, it's used internationally. So they're using it in Canada. They're using it in Europe. There's some modifications to it, but it's really definitely the most used standard.
So I'm over Latin, international sales in Latin America with Focus with Arco, and they're using NFPA.
Yeah,
I don't know anybody who's not.
This is an interesting one too.
Yeah.
There's a huge amount of small to medium contractors, small to medium countries use NFPA. Does AFSA take this into account when writing codes?
Well, AFSA does not write codes, so NFPA writes the codes, and then there's a group out there that helps maintain those codes, and that's an open process where, if you object, for instance,
and that group isn't made up of just folks from AFSA. That's made up of folks from all across the country in different trade associations, in union and non-union, in different positions.
AHJs have representation on NFPA. Engineers have representation on NFPA. Insurance companies have representation on NFPA. And each one of those entities gets a vote. And so before the code or the standard's modified, that group of people debate the issue, and then they'll make a modification to it, add to it, subtract to it. So it's an effort to try to not let any one entity dominate, because if the AHJs were to dominate that, they'd they'd put sprinklers in English muffins if you could. Just, so there has to be some sense of balance to this is enough. So the owner's perspective might be different than the AHJ perspective versus the contractor perspective versus the design professionals perspective. There's all or the insurance company's perspective. There's all different aspects that we try to balance to keep it even and fair.
Right.
That's good.
That is good.
That was a good answer on that. Hey, what's up, big country? How are you? How's everybody doing? Got 7 people. We better have 7 likes.
Somebody asked earlier about your a job you'd worked on, a little above it. I missed it come through.
What's the biggest install job and how long did it take? Hello from Baltimore. What up, Ryan? Sorry I missed you.
What's the biggest one and how long did it take?
We this may have been exceeded, but the one that I recall was we did a large pharmaceutical project in Raleigh, North Carolina. It was over $1 billion, and it was lots of stainless steel and incredibly detailed and complex. It was the most BIM intensive project I'd ever seen be that successful. A lot of times the BIM stuff is half baked, but this one it really worked. And the building information management system or modules, they knew where every 90 was, every piece of all thread rod down to the inch. And
Wow.
it didn't matter just for our trade. It was for all the trades. There was probably 2 years of front end work that went into it. There was, I don't know, maybe 18,000 heads, something like that. But that's not real big.
18,000 heads.
Maybe not, but that's not that big these days in comparison to the
Like
big
Amazons?
box, the Amazons,
Yeah.
and the storage
Matt
facilities.
doesn't know anything
Yeah, but
about
stainless
that.
steel, and when you got like elbow,
Oh, my
and you
God.
gotta really follow the print.
Yeah.
Stainless steel is the hardest pipe we work with.
It's terrible to work with.
Right?
It's
Like-
easy to get to leak. It's
like-
super expensive.
It gets a
Yeah.
little too hot, and it's like diamonds. You can't even get it started.
Yeah, it's tough on your dies.
Yeah.
It's
Oh,
just
yeah.
tough all
It's
around.
tough.
Yeah, you groove a lot of it. But
Mhm.
the stuff gets legs too. It likes to leave the job site.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, it's super expensive. What's up, Juan? What up, everyone? I'll be hitting up NFPA conference and hopefully AFSA in Washington D.C. in October.
Cool.
Awesome.
Oh,
We'll
that's
be
awesome.
there. See you
We'll be
there.
there.
Big
Yeah.
country, you going?
Hopefully everybody on this call is gonna come
Yeah.
to convention.
Yeah, if you'll come,
It's
let
gonna
us
be
know
great.
so we can meet y'all.
Let us know.
There's also a
Meet
lot
you
of
out there.
tours and stuff, so we try to take in the city, and do some neat stuff there. And there's a ton to do up in DC.
So that's a lot of what goes on too at these meetings. There's, the different committees that meet. One of them is the convention committee, and there's about 25, 30 volunteers on that are helping make and guide those decisions to put on a really great, worthwhile convention from, the front of house with the parties and the opening party and closing party to working on the seminars and what's going to be valued from a technical perspective. So it's really excited. Hopefully AFSA, big country.
Yeah.
I think it was our 46th,
44.
44th convention.
Yes.
So-
What are you thinking about the board meetings and being here?
I'm just happy to be involved and see like what's going on and just try to do my part. I'm really passionate about trying to get some young people, bring down the median age of this industry.
Yeah.
Like,
It's scary.
Like when I started at 18, I had some serious competition. That was other 18-year-olds. It's really you like looking at you pipe 5 heads and he's piped 6. You're like, oh shit,
Yeah.
Have you ever
Jeffrey's doing better than me.
have you seen the apprenticeship competition?
Yeah, love
Yeah.
that.
It's
That's
so
so
neat.
cool.
Yeah.
Love it.
It's a really well attended
That's
event.
that's our favorite part of
And
it.
It's very intense. It's tough on those guys to pull that off.
You're on that's a stage. You're on a big.
Yeah.
You're like, oh, you want to be in a competition? Yeah, sure. And then you get out there. You were on. That's a
Big
big
people
stage,
watch.
man. A
Big
lot
people
of people
watch.
watching.
You don't got
Biggest
much up
peop-
yet, and
Biggest
Yeah.
people in the industry,
Right.
right?
It's a great event.
Yeah.
Yeah. Shout out to all the
Yeah, so
the
any
past
bidders
participants.
out there, young guys, look into that and stick your name in the hat and see if you can qualify to make it. And you get a free ride to the convention. And if you wind up winning that event, I think it's a $5,000 prize. Plus, they bring you and your significant other all for free. So
Yeah, that's
Oh,
pretty
yeah.
cool.
it's a neat event.
Yeah, and you get to meet Brian.
which is everybody's favorite.
That's cool to be involved and just see the people sitting around the table and really just see that it's just mostly volunteers. Like, oh, we need help with this. You got Brian. It's like, Brian, oh, I'll help, right? It's all about just who's going to help and how can we help. And
I'm super motivated in this.
the biggest thing is your local chapter. You want to start at your local chapter.
Yeah. Like, I'm also involved in my local chapter, and I'm not on the board or anything like that. So I kind of just started, and I'm just volunteering. I'm just volunteering my time and helping, and then I'll progress from there. But that's where I am now.
Yeah.
And the NFPA positions are also volunteer. The NFPA has their headquarters up in Battery Marsh, Boston. But all those people that help.
Where'd you call it?
Battery Marsh, isn't that right?
I don't know if I've ever heard anyone call it. Quincy.
Quincy.
Yeah. It's a Battery March, though.
Is it? Maybe that's the street that it's on.
It probably is.
Okay.
It's like a old time term.
Yeah, it's Quincy. That's
yeah,
right.
Quincy.
It's like, what are you saying about my city?
The Battery Marsh. Oh, that's good.
And all those people, take their time and volunteer to support the standards too.
Are those elected
And
positions?
then you get a free 13 when you do that.
Oh, really? Well, that's a good deal.
Or whatever committee you're on. There's probably 200 or 300 NFPA committees. So there's a committee on how to handle aircraft hangars. There's a committee on how to design for rubber tire storage or for turnout gear that you would have on the truck. So they cover the full gamut of
Back to like
all the
DOPEandTAPE.
NFPAs.
That's the stuff we want to hear.
Yeah.
Like, someone talk about tire storage.
I want to be
aircraft
involved with
hangars.
241 with NFPA.
Yeah, that's
which one's
something
241?
The safeguarding and
thing.
protecting of a building under construction.
Oh yeah, that's a tough one.
And so I did a lot of that being in Boston, and then I would talk about it. People were like,
What are you
talking
talking
about, dude?
Like
I'm like, am I the
Atlanta?
only one doing this? The only one in the country following this standard?
It's
Boston's the only one enforcing
Boston's fire department is super involved too.
it. First in the nation.
Yeah, and the AHJs
Really?
make such a difference.
Yeah.
When they enforce it.
Mm-hmm.
But that's a tough one. It's a tough one to protect a building under construction, because you really can't meet the requirements in 13.
It's fun.
You have to look the other way, or you have to come up with another
Right.
standard to do it. And you can make a good argument something's better than nothing, but what are you going to put in uprights and then spend all the money to turn them pendant when the ceiling comes in?
That's what they would.
Yeah,
That's what we
that's
do.
what they
And
do.
the
Yeah.
contractors would have to pay for it.
Yeah.
You can't.
Or the owner pays for it.
Well, yeah. Well, BFD wouldn't let us take the ceiling down until the heads was turned up.
Yeah.
And so we would come in, we'd be the first ones there, and we would just pop the tile, put an upright, put a cage, 200
Wait.
degrees, spin it up.
How do you protect it when it's subject to atmospheric temperatures?
And then you'd have to do a cable. There's all different.
So you actually run cable to keep it warm
You would then
temporarily.
you would have to have the whole heat trace cable ran up, and then you
Yeah.
would be able to then take the sprinkler system down. But there's other stipulations that are involved with that I'm probably missing. But
Yeah. No, it's out there. That standard's out there. It doesn't mean that, building code wise it's getting enforced, or AHJ wise it's getting enforced.
we need to get it enforced. It's work. It's good work for us. Also, temp standpipes. If it's over 40 feet,
Oh yeah.
put
yeah.
a temp standpipe. So if the fire department has to go in, they just hook the truck to the
Yeah.
bottom, and they can get water at any level.
Yeah.
And every time you build 2 floors, you got to bump it up 1 floor.
Yeah.
We also have this fast growing thing that we have to figure out with lithium batteries.
Yes. Yeah,
That's a huge
Brian,
problem.
that's a tough one. Those lithium batteries are really, really difficult to protect. And they don't
Seriously.
react well to water.
No.
But right now, and there's a lot of the labs and the manufacturers are doing a lot of work behind the scenes, trying to come up with some methods to do that.
I feel like we need to figure this out quick.
Yeah, it's a tough one. And when they catch on fire, they go like
Yep.
white hot.
Like I'm on a plane with this thing.
Goes in
I
just
know.
thermal.
Burst at any time.
Imagine that it goes in a thermal
What do you do?
runaway on a plane.
Like throw it in the toilet?
Well, technically, so on a plane, they actually have a drop box in the back of the plane where it smothers it. But
Can't you just send it out the back? Is there like a little, like an envelope? You just
Let it go.
flush it. Just flush.
send it down to below. Oh, it's a Boston thing. Florencio, you writing a description? Or he's at work. Florencio helps us with descriptions. It's been very helpful.
But that's a good example of where you can see where the industry has opposition. And you're going to have an owner go, wait a minute, the price of this sprinkler system just doubled, and they're going to push back, and they're going to push back
That's what happens.
through other channels and that
And then
aren't
it's-
so obvious But there's definitely a lot going on behind the scenes.
And the ceiling guys are coming in at night when they don't want to do the spinning the heads up and spinning them back down.
Yeah.
Other trades switch to night. Try to pull the carpet over us.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I'd like to be involved with 241. Any questions? Any
No.
questions from the audience? There's still people in here? Yeah, there's 3 of you guys. Blue Collar Broadcasting from Puerto Rico. This is pretty cool. So what are we up to now? What's the rest of the day like?
So I'm going downtown San Juan, figure it out. I don't know, I'm going to take an Uber and start walking.
There you
and
go.
then I have a dinner at 7. So around like 6, I'll figure out where I need
You
to
don't
go.
have
and
any, you
Uber
don't have
there.
anything either, huh?
Yeah, so the committee meetings finish today, and then tomorrow is the board of directors that meets. So everything that's gone on for the last 2.5 days will get presented to the board, and the board meets from about 7 to 5 tomorrow.
Wow.
And
7 to 5.
They eat breakfast from 7 to 8, but it's a long day.
That's a long day.
They get together once a quarter, and the board of directors are elected positions. So all of the committees that we sit on, those are, I don't know the right political term, chosen positions. By the chair of that by the chair of that committee, but those aren't voted on. They are solidified by the board. The board signs off on them, and the board of directors are voted on by the association themselves. So all of our decisions and subcommittees and budgets that we came up with over the last 2 days go up to the board. They'll meet about
Yeah.
that and many more things.
One of the more important things that the AFSA does is keep track of the not just the NFPA standards, but what are the building codes doing, and it's super important because I've always said people don't put sprinklers in because they want to. They
Yeah.
put them in because they have to.
That's right.
And unless you've personally experienced fire, then maybe you might feel a little bit differently. But that's happening because of the building code. So it's super important we as an industry stay in touch with that aspect of what's going on and
Yeah.
understand that. And the only people that are really involved in that are AHJs. They don't let industry folks involved.
Which I think a lot of local chapters, especially Georgia's, they get the fire marshal office involved in the chapter, and then they work together. And that's super important.
Yeah, there's a couple states that are very, very good at it. Florida's very, very good
Yeah,
at it.
Florida's good.
And there's a lot of states that they just kind of let it happen. So we're really all over the board on that as an industry.
We need some accountability.
Yeah, but like being here makes me feel like, okay, fire protection has a future. We're working towards it, with
Right.
it. Without being here, it's just it's easy to just be a job, but this is a big picture, and you can be, and guys, y'all can be a part of it. I mean, it's easy.
Yeah.
You go to one meeting, now you're in part of growing your industry.
Yep.
So anyone can show up at their local chapter and sit as a guest
Yeah.
Yeah.
if you're an AFSA
I
member.
volunteer.
Yes.
You don't have to be an AFSA member. Just show up as a guest. And we'd like you to become a member.
Yeah. Okay.
And I think some chapters might have different of their own kind of rules and regulations behind the scenes, but anyone should open you at least with open arms for at least one or two, and
Yeah.
So
show you
it's
It's
what
not
we're
tough to get in.
show you what we're offering. We have to be able to tell you like why it's worth joining and that we provide value to you.
So I've been with GFSA for like going to their meetings and events for, I guess, a year or a little over
Yeah,
a year.
just about a year, I think.
Just when I can.
Yeah.
And I'm just became a member.
Yeah. I mean, and they're a great chapter. They've been around for a long time. Some of their founding members were also founding members of AFSA itself. And All South Fire Sprinkler. They were very involved in the inception of AFSA, and they're still very involved in the Georgia chapter. And
Oh yeah.
so there's a lot of history there, and the local chapters really can do a lot from a legislative perspective, from a networking perspective.
And
There's-
influence the local stuff, like 241's close to your heart there in Boston. The local chapter can, be involved in that, and it's more effective a lot of times when it is local. And the national tries to give you some armaments, if you will, to help you fight your fight. But a lot of times it's best if it's fought locally. And speaking of history, here's a good story, and I'm just kind of
Yeah.
throwing stuff out. But NFPA 13R has got an interesting history. Where did that come from?
Or the residential?
The residential code, right? So you've got 13, which is the Mac Daddy,
Right.
and then you've got 13R, which is really sprinkler system light.
Mm-hmm.
And how did that come to be? And so that's a good story. And a lot of times these efforts from the building code standpoint take decades. There's just an effort to try to get something into the code. So same thing with single family. There's some jurisdictions that require, some states and some jurisdictions that require all new single family homes to be protected. How did that get there? Back to the building code. So there was an effort for a long, long time to get that into the building codes. So the same thing kind of happened with 13R, which probably a lot of your audience installs. So what was happening there was the construction industry was building more and more with wood, and a lot of lightweight wood, and so we're going multifamily, we're going up 3 and 4 stories, and so we're like, well, that needs to get protected. But there was a lot of objection from ownership over the cost. So they said, look, if we'll come up with this sprinkler system light, this NFPA 13R, so you don't have to do bathrooms, you can leave the garage out, you don't have to do the attics. So it's not the full system, and the calculations are a little less demanding. You don't need to deliver quite as much water. So you drove the cost down. Well, that was really a political compromise to get sprinklers in these facilities that hadn't been done forever. So that really started around the 80s. And so now it's part of our vernacular. It's what we're used to, but those are 13R systems. But the reason why those were lightened up was because it was just more economical. And now you'll see we'll lose 2 or 3 buildings a year because fire is starting up in the attic and there's 13Rs and coming down. And there's an effort to say, look, we need to get rid of 13R and just go 13 everywhere. But again, there's pushback on that because of the cost associated with it. And then 13D, which is single family homes,
Right.
is even lighter yet. But
Still being developed.
and
Yeah.
kind of they all are, Brian. They're all kind of always under modifications and tweaking and stuff. But those ones were really brand new efforts. And 13D, I don't know exactly when that came in, but not terribly far from the same era as 13R. So 13D is for 1 and 2 family dwellings. 13R is for multifamily, like 3 levels and up, and then you got 13, which is what you guys are probably most familiar with. But even that 13D effort took decades, and finally the building code said, okay, we want to see these. So around 2016, the International Building Code said, all right, we're going to start to require all new single-family homes to have fire sprinklers. That's in the National Building Code, which is actually called the IRC, the International Residential Code. Well, then the states, Massachusetts, Virginia, Georgia, you pick it, they adopt that or don't, or they modify it. They can adopt it with modifications. So what happened is most states adopted that building code, but they carved out the single family requirement. They said, we're not going to do that. The opposition being the home builders, they didn't want to see it. They thought it was expensive.
It's the same thing. So we know it's the same thing with Costa Rica. So there was this big fire at a hospital, and then the fire protection professionals trying to implement more sprinklers, and it's because of the cost. So the lobbyists for the contractors were pushing against it and won.
Yeah, and then what the big argument, what they'll do is they'll say, well, we'll just put more extinguishers in, we'll put more alarms in,
Right.
But that's passive, or that's enunciation. That's not suppression, and it's not automatic suppression, and it's a shame. America's a lot more stringent in that. So this is a really interesting tidbit with that 13D story. So it took this long battle to get 13D in single-family homes put into the building code. A lot of the states carved it out. Georgia has it, California has it, Maryland has it, and some jurisdictions adopt it. But as often happens in these things, there was a trade-off. And the trade-off was, if we put sprinklers in, if the code said, if you put automatic sprinklers in, we'll let you build with lighter weight construction. You don't need 1 or 2 hour drywall, and you might need one more space of egress. So those were the trade-offs. The building code, the building officials, the builders were happy because they didn't have to spend as much, and they got some in return. Every state that I'm aware of that has carved out the single-family requirement, none of them have put the other requirement back in. So these new homes burn faster than the old homes. It's crazy.
Well, some of it like 13R.
And the fire departments know it. They, like they can't go into a home that was built, maybe in 2018 and something, because the construction's so lightweight, it goes like that. Because they should have had the sprinklers on, but nobody wants to hear that long-winded story, and so the localities that just carve it out, they say, well, we don't want the sprinkler thing, and not even have any idea of the trade-off that was made.
Wow.
That's scary.
It is scary.
Book of matches.
Because I'm looking for a new house, and I want new construction. And then my plan is to keep it as a long-term rental. Long-term, we'll move.
I'll pipe it up. I'll pipe the house
Yeah,
for you.
man.
You're gonna build it
but
cheap.
Run it exposed. It looks
Cheap,
cool.
dude. Copper.
He has it exposed in his house.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I tell the wife that all the time. Like, I'd love to put
Iron?
exposed copper.
Exposed iron?
I-
Exposed copper.
Yeah, it looks cooler.
Yeah, that would be cool.
Yeah.
You have copper?
Actually, I did it in brass.
Oh.
The stuff I ran exposed.
Uh-huh.
Yeah, I concealed it in a lot of
Oh,
spots,
that
but I got some wood beams and I put brass pipe in there.
That's so
It looks
cool.
tough.
That is
I
cool.
wonder if I get my wife on board.
I put a little pump and a little tank in there, so I didn't tie it into the municipal supply, so I don't have to worry about the backflow.
Is that
crap.
a Talco?
I didn't go with Tokel. I went with a different. I forget what the name of it was, but
Those are cool. It's
put
just
a
like
little tank underneath the stairwell.
It's
and,
got a little built-in pump.
Yeah,
We're talking
you only
about-
need like 300 gallons. I mean,
Yeah.
it's really manageable.
It's a small tank.
It is a small tank. You got to find the room for it, but
Yeah.
a 13D system, it doesn't require that much water to. You can put a fire out with a couple hundred gallons, pretty good.
Putting that into single-family dwellings, that's going to be a game changer for our industry. We
It
go
is.
from a small one to a very large industry very fast, and then
It
we'll
does.
have to adopt, and that'll be a decade of craziness.
It will.
But
It'll change a
it'll
lot.
be amazing.
Gonna go back to labor.
Well,
We
and
need people.
that's a great
Yeah.
point, Bobby, because what we see as sprinkler contractors or AFSA, predominantly that space is done by plumbers. They're already in the house.
They're stealing it. Well,
It's cheap, they're in the space, and so a lot of times it's difficult as a sprinkler contractor to elbow your way into that cost-wise. You can do it, and and guys do, sprinkler contractors do, but predominantly what we've noticed is the single-family market. A lot of plumbers get into that space.
So that plumber contractor will just get a fire protection license.
Yeah.
Or they
Yeah.
put all the piping in, and then
And
they
they'll
just
get
pay a
the-
sprinkler
they'll get
guy
the-
for one day to screw the heads in and do the valves and all that.
They'll-
The multifamily thing is big in Massachusetts. If you have a 2 or 3 family and you're going to try to renovate it, if you renovate 51%, you got to sprinkle the whole thing. So now that's created loopholes where they'll do the 3rd unit, and rent it for a year, and then they go do the 2nd unit, rent it for a year, and so you never do the 51%. But so we're getting buildings that are getting sprinkled, but there's already loopholes that were created because of the.
Of course.
Oh, I only renovated 48% this year.
Yeah. It's like what we do with
do
taxes,
the next
right?
3.
Yeah. I would love a water mist system in my home. 10% of the water used, less water damage. You got it, Andrew.
That's a great point, Andrew. I'm a big fan of water mist, and I think over the decades ahead, we're going to see a lot more of that. It's amazing what mist will put out. The trade-off is you need a lot of pressure in order to create that mist. So you need a certain type of pump. Your fittings have to be rated for it, but you can put out a boatload of fire with very, very little water. I've seen tests where just they light up a heptane fire, 3x3 fire, and put a phone book in there, light it all on fire, and they put the whole thing out with like 2 gallons. and it's just it's mist that does the whole thing.
Wow.
Which is really nice for people that are wigged out about water.
Yeah,
Less water damage.
Correct. Museums and stuff like that.
'Cause that's
you
where
know.
a lot of your damage from a fire comes from when the firemen get in there with their axe and their inch and a half hose.
You gotta break something.
Yeah, that is,
Blasting it.
yeah.
Give me water.
But I think you'll see more water. Water mist is used a lot in Europe. It's not as much over here. But
Yeah, but that was our Australian guy talking about that water mist. It's pretty cool.
it is. It's really neat. And I wouldn't be surprised if if the industry figures out a way to do that for high piled storage and some of these, these Amazons and these server centers that we're doing, where you've got 30, 40, 50, 60 feet worth of storage right now, which is a frightening load of fire material. But I wouldn't be surprised if we figure out a way to have mist do it a little bit better, and then you don't have that much. You won't have 8-inch running everywhere.
Please.
That would change the game.
Let's figure it out.
Yeah.
I'd love that.
Did you ever pull on any chain tongs?
Oh, like we did. We were just talking about this earlier. It was like 2.5 miles of 8-inch Schedule 40 we put in one hospital.
Yeah.
The FDCs went up. We had pressure reducing stations, both FDCs on the front and back that had to connect, go up to level 7, come back down.
Yeah.
Schedule 40. Some of it we were hanging at 30 feet.
Ooh.
Chain fall.
Yeah.
It takes a long time to put one piece of pipe up.
Schedule 10?
Schedule 40.
40, yeah.
Schedule 40.
Man up.
Cutting 7-footers. Still can't handle it. I mean, it's.
You cut it into 7-footers?
We had it fabbed in 7-footers. Yeah.
Yeah, that's nice. Smart.
The lifts won't even go up. Even if you get it on the lift won't lift.
Yeah.
So
I've had that experience.
you just got a chain
before.
fall guy.
Some designers or owners would say, just use the 21-foot stick because I don't care about your labor. Just say, I don't want to buy those 2
How we
couplings.
getting it up, boss?
Yeah.
Maybe I should ask Victog to give me a hybrid system, misting and nitrogen.
Yeah.
Good
yeah.
luck.
The nitrogen's a great additive, and it makes a huge difference. I think we'll see a lot more nitrogen systems, too. It really adds to the suppression capabilities.
And longevity of the system.
Yeah, it also helps with corrosion. You're 100% right. Yeah.
Man,
That was already a whole hour.
Yeah, thank y'all for coming and
Imagine that.
hanging out
He
with
can
us.
keep going.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, we could keep going.
We could get. I mean, I got.
Fine.
I'm just gonna be stuck with Brian all night. We want to keep going. Keep it going.
You guys are roomies.
Yeah. Yeah. Oh,
Cool. Thank
this
you.
is awesome. It's a
Yeah,
good trip.
absolutely.
Thank
Appreciate
you
you.
guys.
Appreciate
Yeah.
the talk.
I'm really glad you guys could make it, and looking forward to more meetings and